Jake Airy is a host of StudioJake at StudioJakemedia.com. I wanted to bring him on because I believe he feels my same passion for entertainment and hope that somehow American principles can work their way back into American entertainment. How are you, Jake?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
So I appreciate you coming on, and I wanted to see if, in fact, I was right, that it has been, to a certain extent, collectivism and Marxism and communism have been subtle at first. They took about a 10-year period off during World War II, and then really hardcore to where we would all be better off if we kind of accepted kind of a hybrid capitalist collectivist society. And it's been being sold to us even on programs. Am I fair in saying that?
Oh, absolutely. There's been so much documentation showing that is a fact.
And there's also a very a willingness for the modern day Marxist to kind of eat their own and go after very successful people who were very welcomed in their industry. And I was reading from StudioJake Media how, in fact, they're even going after some very notable authors like Tolkien, right?
Yeah, it's really odd with Tolkien because he was so openly against fascism, against communism, against collectivism. Anyone who has read The Lord of the Rings, which I have, or even The Hobbit, can attest to this. But it's like they want to imprint their own ideals of social justice onto his fiction. So they'll take a line out of context, a line from one of the poems that he wrote in the books, in order to say, oh, hey, he was one of us. He was a leftist, because they know they can't just throw him out yet. And I was speaking with someone else, and I said, I think C.S. Lewis is going to be next. I think they're going to try to imprint their own ideas onto C.S. Lewis's works.
You know, it used to be, and what I loved about film is that somebody, an unknown, a kid, could come out of the nowhere. And it was because of his work, because of his unique artist ability and vision and his ability to write. Somebody like Orson Welles could come up and change cinematography. I don't know to this day if Orson Welles was a communist or a capitalist. I believed he shared American principles and appreciation, because after all, it was only a country like this that could make an Orson Welles. But if you have an entire industry, an entertainment industry, that wants to have as a resume not just a builder, but a prerequisite that you are, in fact, a socialist sympathizer, aren't you going to forever change what could be by keeping out people that may be the next Orson Welles if they happen to be affiliated with non-communists?
Absolutely, and we're seeing that in real time. There's a blacklist that's happening in Hollywood that is very different from the ones that happened during, sort of the Red Scare, which I actually don't think it was as big a Red Scare as people thought it was. I think people had reason to be concerned. But we're seeing it for one side of the aisle, whereas before it was about sort of a foreign power. So are you affiliated with international socialist or international communist? Now they're actually going after Americans who have sort of what you were describing earlier as Americanism ideals, those homegrown things that make us all patriot, and they're trying to go after people who want to espouse those sort of ideals, and I think that they're alienating the audience by doing this.
I was listening or reading somewhere, an old studio head has said that because of the way in which filmmaking in the industry has changed, it is going to be controlled by but 4 main companies, and those are these streaming companies who have now branched off into their own studios. So the way that I grew up, I'm in my 50s, the way that I grew up with having some competition and to a certain extent, even the ability for some newcomers to break in and grab a foothold. And I mean this, not doing a hip check, but even like the Weinstein Company came out of virtually nowhere and then grabbed a big portion of that industry because it was a studio that had a mission to go after certain action movies and that kind of Quentin Tarantino thing. When you have just these few studio heads in charge, can that ever happen again, or are they just forever going to dominate what we see?
With film, I honestly have a little bit more optimism. I've talked with other film enthusiasts about this. I have more hope because every once in a while something breaks through. And we saw for a while the movie industry was controlled by 5 studios, right? They called them the Big Five. We saw,
Right.
MGM and Warner Brothers and so on and so forth. And then now, like you're saying, it's the streaming services. It's HBO Max, Netflix, Amazon Studios. And I think that streaming is going to evolve how we watch movies, but I honestly think we're going to see sort of another quake, if you will, with the film industry, that it's going to kind of go back to sort of these indie productions, because we're seeing that happen right now, where just an indie movie will just blow everyone's minds, and it'll break through the Tomorrow War starring Chris Pratt. That no one saw that one coming, and it was a huge success for Amazon Studios, and it's a movie that avoids sort of the SJW narrative. It focuses on strong moral values, and I think that gives me hope a little bit to say, hey, I think we can get to the other side of this. It's going to be a fight, but I think we can do it.
Break down the SJW. What do you mean by that?
Well, social justice warriors who want to sort of infect culture with this very left-wing collectivism that sort of, promotes the ideas of socialism, of communism. They want to bring that into the culture through our favorite entertainment. We're seeing that happening with Star Wars, with He-Man, and I'm using sort of these pop culture references because that's where they start. And as you mentioned earlier, now they're moving into Tolkien with Amazon Studios, The Lord of the Rings, their prequel series. They've already said we're going to make it like Game of Thrones. Well, that's not Middle Earth. That's not Tolkien. And so they're bringing in sort of these collectivist values into these properties that people love because, in my opinion, they can't do anything original, or when they try, they end up embarrassing themselves. The Cuties debacle is a perfect example of this.
Yeah. Although being half Norwegian, I was always fond of Thor. Kind of had my eye on Captain America. I never liked the tights. However, the whole point of his story is that he was in love during World War II, and he was enhanced through this genetic engineering so that he never aged, yet the love of his life dies, and he is forlorn for decades into the future, and now he is homosexual. Do you think that that is specifically to both push forward the social justice warrior mission and at the same sense a little hip check towards patriotism, or is it just, man, am I being too sensitive?
No, you're absolutely right. Even Marvel Comics themselves, they just recently published a comic book that shows Captain America seemingly fighting on the side of the Viet Cong. They haven't been so much open and explicit, but the comic book, I believe it's called, the name escapes me, but they're basically showing Captain America beating up U.S. soldiers who are fighting the war in Vietnam. And I really think, like you said, it's a hip check, and they're saying, hey, what you thought was great wasn't so great. America wasn't great. It isn't great, and neither was Captain America. And, Captain America is a person who's obviously in fiction, and he's someone that I certainly grew up loving. I had Captain America action figures, collect the comic books, still do. And I think that we're going to see a cultural pushback against this sort of thing continuing, and we're seeing it it's particularly in comic books where the sales are dropping faster than the lock, and people are even turning to the Eastern market to get their alternatives to comic books in the form of manga and anime.
If Wonder Woman transitions, what's her name going to be?
I guess Wonder Z.
Do you remember there's a movie written about the true story of Wonder Woman. And one of the favorite things I like about it is that at the time, Wonder Woman was really seen as something outrageous, as she was, and the author was a male, embracing her sexuality as a woman and able to have kind of that beginning of the I am a woman and I am strong and can be just as strong as men. And it was really something to watch, as she was sexy, yet she was a superhero. Instead of women embracing that, why do you think it is that we have this new culture of women that want to destroy that idea of femininity and what a woman could be versus this new kind of barista transitioning kind of hero?
I feel that the attack on femininity is in part just the natural next step after they went after masculinity, right? They had to go after straight males, particularly straight white males. And so now they have to say, oh, femininity, it's also toxic. And they're trying to make everyone seem androgynous, because if you're androgynous, you're just part of the collective. There is no individuality. What is so great about sort of traditional femininity is it makes a person an individual. It makes a woman an individual with, like you said, strength and power, and in her own way and in her own right. So they have to eliminate that, just like they have continually gone after masculinity for the past decade. It's just the next logical step in the attack, and we're seeing that with the Powerpuff Girls remake that their CW is trying to get off the ground. We're seeing that in other properties. I mentioned Star Wars earlier. Star Trek is another one where they're trying to pull this off. And I really feel that
who's going to be gay in Star Trek? I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Who's going to be gay?
Oh, I am too. But the new stuff, like you're saying, they are just trying to eliminate femininity altogether, and I think that it's going to get worse.
They're not going to make. Is Kirk going to be gay in the next one?
If you make Captain Kirk gay, I believe even the most hardened left-wing Star Trek fan will revolt against that.
All right, we got to keep some. Let's keep some sanity. The pro-life movie Gosnell. I didn't get a chance to dive into the article. Give me an update before I let you go.
Well, as far as I know, Gosnell was a huge success. I used to work with Andrew Clavin, who wrote the script. I know the producers. It is something that is going to blow your minds, and obviously it came out, I believe, in 2019. So,
and it was banned. Was it banned right away?
It was not banned right away. It did get banned on certain streaming services, but last I checked, I believe you can still rent it in some places. But it definitely had trouble getting any sort of theatrical representation.
Don't you think it's ironic that the communist sympathizers of today and the modern day Democrats are very comfortable banning things? Do you just not find that outrageous?
I do. It makes me chuckle. It makes me chuckle every time I see that they went after something new or something old, and they say, hey, we can't have that anymore.
Jake Airy, host of StudioJake at StudioJakeMedia.com. I want to thank you for joining me. I had a good time. I hope you come back and keep us updated on the new trends in fascism in the future. What do you say?
Absolutely, and thank you again for having me on.
All right, wonderful. I'll take your calls and comments after we get back.